Good afternoon. This is the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners for May 1st, 2018. I'm Commissioner Bud Blake, Chair of the Board this year. I'd like to start off by doing introductions. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner John Hutchings. And to his right is Labadina Bomar, Clerk of the Board. And to her right is the County Manager, Romero Chavez. And to his right is Jeremy Davis, Associate Planner for Community Planning and Economic Development. Today we have a public hearing on the renewal of the interim marijuana cannabis regulations. And so today's subject of the hearing is to accept public testimony on the extension of a current interim regulations for state licensed marijuana cannabis producers, processors, and retailers. Currently there are no changes to propose with the renewal. Just for information's sake, for the public testimony, there's a sign-in sheet in the back. I have one here, but there's another one in the back for those who wish to sign in. And when I call your name on the list here, you'll have 3 minutes in which you'll come to the podium and speak. There's the 3-minute clock up on the board on the wall here. You'll see it, and Labanito will set that here just shortly. When the 3 minutes starts, you'll have the entire portion of it. When you get to the end of 3 minutes, you'll hear this kind of a buzzard sound. If you're in mid-thought as far as where you're at, I'll ask you to finish up, but at the same time, I'm going to encourage you to, we want you to finish your thought, in other words, but we want you to at the same time adhere to the 3-minute rule. So, and when you do come into the podium, just mention your first and last name and generally where you live in the county, so that would help out a lot. So, and that's for the record. So with that in mind, I'll start by asking Jeremy, the staff person here, to give us some background on where we're at as far as the marijuana cannabis regulation.
Chair Blake, Commissioners, Jeremy Davis again, Community Planning and Economic Development. As Chair Blake indicated, we're here to hold a public hearing on a renewal of interim regulations for state licensed marijuana producers, processors, and retailers. The current interim regulations will expire on May 8th if not renewed. The Growth Management Act allows for renewal periods of 6 months following a public hearing. The interim regulations were last renewed on October 24, 2017, effective November 8, 2017, with ordinance number 15533. The board may approve the ordinance following the public hearing. If it's not approved, it will be scheduled for May 8th for final consideration. The proposed renewal, again, would extend the interim regulations by 6 months to November 8th, 2018. It also amends the 6-month work plan to account for increased time necessary for completing review of permanent regulations by the board. No changes are proposed again with this interim regulation renewal. The interim regulations were first established back in November of 2013. They've been renewed and amended approximately 11 times and 2 times with the current Board of County Commissioners. A public hearing notice was published on April 6, 2018 in the Olympian. A press release and email to interested parties was also sent out last week. To date, staff received 11 comments regarding the interim regulation renewal tonight. A comment summary has been provided to the Board of County Commissioners, as have all the written comments. You received comments from Susan Mayer, Ingeborg Pillar, Richard Bennick, and I apologize for any name issues with that. George Mai, another one from Mr. Bennick, Michelle Marie, Trish Keening-Wilkie, and Brian Anderson, and Din Wilkie, and Antonia Wood. The comments were in support of maintaining the current limitation on marijuana producers, processors, and retailers to commercial and industrial zones. A few comments mentioned limitation on marijuana uses just in general rural zoned areas. No comments were received by staff at this point in time, no written comments. To allow marijuana uses in the rural residential area. If you remember, Board, we did prohibit those back in 2015. I believe Chair Blake was on the commission then. So,
yep, sure was.
The comments generally indicated that marijuana uses in the rural area contribute to an increase in crime, the destruction of neighborhood character, land values, and the quality of life for property owners. There were also issues with water quality mentioned and use of pesticides and water use by marijuana production locations. Commenters also mentioned enforcement issues and the ability of the county to enforce its own marijuana regulations, and an indication that growing marijuana is not like a regular agricultural activity such as growing tulips or other agricultural products. Several of the comments did reference specific site locations. Those have already been referred over to the Development Services Division of Community Planning and Economic Development for their review. And also one comment on the pesticide use and water use was referred off to environmental health staff, and they've already provided an answer to the commenter. With that, are there any questions?
Let me see. Any comments or questions from you?
No, I don't.
How about you, sir?
I have just a couple quick questions. And none of these questions are indicative of pro or con on this issue. I just want to get just good, clean information. It mentioned, I'm sorry, sorry for sniffling. A few comments mentioned a limitation on marijuana uses in rural zones. A few of the comments mentioned it in that they want to have a limitation?
No. They want to have a limitation, so they don't want to see the marijuana uses out in the rural county outside of urban growth areas. At least that's my interpretation of the comments. Those, of course, have been provided to you.
Okay. And then the second one from the bottom, Jeremy, commenters mentioned enforcement issues and the ability of the county to enforce the regulations. Has the county come to you at all? 'Cause I'm not sure they've come to the commission about.
Other than these comments, I haven't seen any. There have, of course, been reporting in the past, too, so, and other issues that we've encountered in the past.
All right. And again, these comments that are the questions I have are not indicative of where I am on this issue at all. I don't want anybody to infer anything from that. I just want to get the best information I can. Thank you.
Yeah,
No, I don't.
all right, so we'll open up to the public testimony. And so I have the sign-in sheet here. And so I'll just call the first person's name and go right down the list. And so Jed Haney, is Jed Haney here? Yeah. Hello, sir. How are you doing there?
Thank you.
Good. You have the floor. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Excellent. My name is Jed Haney. To give you some context, born in Thurston County, born in Lewis County, raised up in Thurston County. Did travel abroad, and in that time abroad, in 2004, I started growing cannabis for a medical community in Oregon. That's how long I've been associated with this plant. Much longer before that, humans have had a history with this plant, going back to our prohibition in 1937. If we go and look back at that, that's when the word marijuana was termed. So I refer to this plant as cannabis. Cannabis sativa actually is the appropriate taxonomical, excuse me, I'm nervous.
It's all right. Let me know.
Phrase to that plant. I only say that. I know we're doing policy talk, but realistically, what we have to recognize is this plant has been around a lot longer than 1937. And the concerns that are being put in place right now have been dealt with by the public for a lot longer than that. Okay? So first and foremost, a lot of these public concerns should have been addressed by the legislature. In fact, in 2015, we had H. Bill 2136, House Bill 2136, HB 2136. Are you familiar with that, commissioners?
You have the floor. We're listening
So
to
if
you.
you're not familiar with that, I'll just let you know that House Bill 2136 was the Marijuana 502 Fix Bill. We allowed jurisdictional powers to reduce the buffer from 1,000 feet to down to 150 feet. Now, of course, some reduction might trigger a SEPA or other things, so we have to be, conservative about that reduction. But you have the ability to. Now, in my review of all of this, I do not see any sort of nod towards that ability to reduce zoning and to actually put these businesses in a place where they won't impact the community. Right now, you're shoving them into industrial and commercial sectors, which are outpricing other businesses to exist there. It's creating what we call clustering, and that clustering is creating a non-fair competitive advantage against other businesses. Now I'll go further. It's a right to farm county, it's a right to farm state. The WSDA considers this an agricultural product. I understand the legislature is looking at it over and over again. According to them, as far as I know and everybody I talk to, it's an agricultural product unless we're talking about tax. So, it's your job to dictate the health of this community both by the farmers and by the consumers and by the public. And it is my job to tell you you're doing a poor job at it. I think you should relook at this, tool it better, and give something to this new industry. And by the way, Majority Leader Senator McConnell is passing the Farm Bill 2018, which has hemp decriminalization in it, giving the power to the WSDA to license hemp. Hemp is cannabis. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words there, sir. All righty, next we have Christy White. Is Christy. Hello, Christy. Hello. Come on up. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioners Hutching, Blake, and Edwards, thank you again for the opportunity for this hearing for the public to once again make comments. I ask the board to strongly consider the details of the zoning. It is asked of the commissioners to continue to approve the interim ordinance, which does not allow commercial grow and processing operations in rural, residential, and agricultural zoning. I ask again that the commissioners direct the planning staff to provide a code that at a minimum includes the requests made in my previous letters dated April 25th, 2017 and October 24th, 2017, and listed again at the comments I'll be giving you tonight. I also point out that current commercial operations located in rural residential and agricultural areas be relocated. As noted in the April 13th, 2018 News Tribune, nearly $1 million of cannabis tax revenue was generated per month for Thurston County by one local facility. There is more than enough funding from these taxes to relocate operations from rural residential and agricultural areas to areas zoned commercial. Thurston County must be resolute to protect the residential and rural character of our county. I quote some of the comment again from the April 13th, 2018 News Tribune by one of the largest producers and processors in the state. This is an exciting industry, quote, this is an exciting industry, particularly in Thurston County, where the green door has been opened. Where Tacoma and Seattle are still stewing in bureaucracy, Thurston County is surging ahead. It is up to you, our elected officials, to protect your rural residents from an industry that is damaging to rural communities. These precious lands cannot be drowned in an unbridled surge for profits. It is a commercial product that belongs in commercial zones. Rural protections are being eroded in Thurston County. It's not bureaucracy when it is time spent on careful and thoughtful work. I reference the most irresponsible decision, in my opinion, for the mineral land designations of rural and agricultural lands in the county that just recently occurred. It is not easy to protect rural, but it must be a priority of the commissioners. As I look at your vision statement and your mission statement on the wall this evening when I came in, it says the mission is to ensure the health and well-being and promote environmental transparency. It must be delivered, this environmental protections, not just in writing, but actual action. And so I commend you on keeping the rural zones protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words, too, ma'am. So the next person I have on the list is Jeff Merriman. Hello, sir. How are you?
Pretty good.
Yep. You got the floor. Go ahead.
My name is Jeff Merriman. Grew up Lewis County, live in Thurston, own a cannabis farm out there on a 1 to 5, 100-foot setback from the property line. Natural sunscreen fence. There's no smell problems at my property line at 100 feet. But everyone really talks about cannabis ruining our rural lands. But if you look at our pesticide and fertilizer list, it's very small compared to normal ag that has really killed off Thurston County lands. I mean, you can grow rocks out there because the life in the soil is just gone. Thankfully, my farm is 1 year into a 3-year thing to be the first internationally recognized farm on the mainland USA for natural farming. You guys aren't behind that type of farming. You guys are behind big ag. Let's kill, let's put fertilizers on. Okay, that's great. I live in a county full of people that don't care about the environment, they care about profits. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say you guys are very uneducated in farming. I've been in here, I've brought in folders to you guys. I'm sure they hit the trash right away. But you know something, at the end of the day, when cannabis is right up there for cutting edge technology, organics, natural, and stuff like that, I hope you guys at least show up and say, you know, we tried to fight you. You guys do have the best outlook for our communities and stuff like that. Maybe you guys will actually take the time to see that we do care about our environment a lot more than normal big ag does. So some people say we should move to commercial areas. Does anyone know what it takes to move a cannabis business? You got to sell all your product. You got to take it down. It's a 9-act play. It's 10 times harder than actually setting up. So, I mean, I teach natural farming to regular people. It's one of these things, I use it. I've never seen those big rocks in my soil in Rochester disappear, actually dissolve. I mean, you guys put all this mineral land out. It's great for mining operations. It's great for my cannabis plants because I'm dissolving the minerals into the plant itself without use of evasive equipment, without big chemicals. But yet, I hear everyone say that we're out here to hurt. Big ag hurt our lands. I'm out here trying to fix it. I bet you none of you guys have ever heard of beneficial runoff. The water that comes off my plants and stuff is beneficial. It brings life into the soil, into the streams. It brings fish back up our streams. You can't say that about big ag, but you guys all support big ag. So I really question, what are you guys up there for? From my perspective, you're doing a horrible job. You're hurting the environment. I really hope that you guys take some time to educate yourself. Google Korean natural farming.
Thank you for your words, sir. So the next person I have on my list is Steve Klein.
Commissioners, good evening. My name is Steve Klein. I live out by the Lackamas School, southeast Thurston, 6 miles down the road from that pastoral scene right here. I felt compelled here to come tonight because, in full disclosure, I'm the Yelm Community Blog host, and I have reported on this situation. My wife and I have been very concerned. While we support cannabis, marijuana, and the industry, and we support natural and humane farming practices, what we don't support are large operations, particularly in our rural areas. We have been horrified, my wife and I, to learn about our neighbors up the street, not too far from that scene, that have had a marijuana growing operation with the Klieg lights on 24/7. So much so that last year we have a 40-acre tract that came available next to our property. We purchased it just to take it off the market because we were that concerned that the regulations would not be extended and that we would have additional marijuana large tract growing operations that would come out into southeast Thurston. My wife and I just want to add our voice to say that we think this should be studied more. This gentleman before me has raised some compelling issues that need to be heard, and we ask your consideration to extend the regulations another 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words too, sir. And so now next on the list I have Michelle Brigham.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hello.
My name
Michelle, can you bring there you go. All right.
My name is Michelle Hawkins Brigham, and I live outside of Yelm, Washington. Thank you, Commissioners in Thurston County, for upholding the hearing examiner's decision denying our neighbor's application to produce and process what could have been 40,000 square feet of marijuana and possibly more in undocumented plants in additional greenhouses. In 2014, my husband and I began a 4-year journey fighting the threat that was destroying our neighborhood character. We are still fighting that battle at a cost so far of $70,000. $70,000 to stop an injustice resulting from a county ordinance. Lack of foresight in county and state regulations did not and still do not adequately protect residents from an industry so new to the state. No one knows the eventual outcome. Former Commissioner Sandra Romero visited our property in 2016 and offered us an apology. She said planners didn't really know what they were doing when they created the early marijuana ordinance. She said the language was too weak to help us. Our story demonstrates the caution required when attempting to turn an illicit trade such as marijuana into an ethical business for everyone's benefit. The industry is still riddled with black market activity, and it does not belong in the countryside. No resident should be forced to live next to or have to move away, and they have, because of detention-like facilities spreading like a cancer over the landscape and barely monitored for unlawful activity. However well-intentioned, The LCB, with just 16 officers, is incapable of enforcing the regulations, and even more so when they identify upset neighbors as NIMBYs. Common people like ourselves have nowhere to turn if regulations do not protect the safety of our communities, our easements, our air, water, and soil, our pets, our children, our elderly, our neighborhood character, and the health of the natural environment. When we submitted evidence of what was occurring, it was used to accelerate our neighbor being rewarded with not just one, but 2 operating licenses with full support from the LCB and initially Thurston County. The sheriff was never notified by the prior director about the scale of the dual operations. Finally, after years of unlawful production, a second raid occurred on the property, and only then did the county acknowledge that our neighborhood was being negatively impacted. Vesting of a marijuana business should never be justification for allowing or rewarding illicit activity. Vesting is completely unfair to residents who were never notified about a Schedule I drug intending to be produced and processed on a massive scale next door to them. Our story is an example of what harm inappropriate zoning asides a final ordinance. If they don't make it known this is an unwanted menace, they too will have to try to live with the threat of nauseating odor, traffic, crime, pollution, water loss, cameras, dogs, strangers, enormous cost, noise, and a constant fear of retaliation. I support renewal of the current interim ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your words too tonight. So the next person I have on the list is Jonas Brigham. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Jonas or John Brigham? No? Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your first name. It's not, I can't read the premiership. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead, sir. You have the floor.
My name is James Brigham.
James, I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Lovely to see you all again. I was here at a planning commission meeting several years ago where the Liquor Control Board came in glowing terms told you about all they were doing to enforce this and how they were going to protect everybody. But I have to say they may be well-intentioned, but so far I haven't seen seen them walk their talk at all. And in fact, if you go to them and talk to them, they'll tell you that they only have 16 officers to enforce all this, and they're just overwhelmed. So we can't depend on them, so we have to depend on you. So the original ordinance was, as it was planned, was for mom and pops to have these nice little cottage industries, but that's not what has happened. What has happened is we have cartels, we have industrial people, we have people that have lived on the fringes of the law. They're coming in, they have no intention, most of them don't live there, they have no intention of obeying the law any more than they absolutely have to. And so these operations have no place in rural residential areas. Now, I've worked on several of them that have been for the tribes, and they are in industrial areas where they have the infrastructure, the security, the lights, the water resources, and that's where they belong, and I support them there, but not here. So last time I spoke to you, I said to you, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, and you did. So this time I ask you, please, pass this interim ordinance and drive a silver stake through the heart of this monster and keep it out of rural residential areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words. All righty, that concludes those who've signed in on the first come serve, signed in on the paper. I'd just like to the audience, and by a show of hands, is there anybody who wishes to come to the podium and address the board that has not already? Seeing no one, okay, we'll move on with the process. And so I'll ask, is there any other follow-up questions or comments of Jeremy or any other staff? Or?
I would like to ask the county manager, I heard a figure out there of millions of dollars or something that the county gets. I just wonder if you can clarify what really we get, or maybe we do get that.
No, we don't get that amount of money. And in fact, as you may recall, most of the revenues associated with the cannabis business goes to the state. Mm-hmm. And the state, in 2017, gave the county $118,000 as a result of perhaps the millions that have been generated in sales taxes in Thurston County. So the county does not see a benefit from that sales tax.
Thank you.
That was a question I had, because the misperception is, boy, it's $1 million industry. County's making a ton of money, and it was $118,000 is all the state allowed us back. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Jeremy, do you have any other comments to follow
I
up? No?
don't have anything else to add, sir.
Okay, great. So, anything else? Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries. And what is the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve an ordinance renewing ordinance number 14944 as amended, which established interim regulations for state licensed marijuana producers, processors, and retailers for 6 months, effective May 8, 2018, the expiration of ordinance number 15533.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded as stated. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.